Welcome to our latest installment of ABL Advisors video series featuring thought leaders from the commercial finance industry. I'd like to welcome today's guest, Jim Loughlin, the national leader for BDO's restructuring practice. Thanks very much for being here today, Jim.
It's a pleasure, Mike.
I'd like to start in on the topic of today's discussion, if we can. But before we do that, if you could take a moment, just tell our viewers a bit about yourself.
Great, I appreciate that. Mike, I've been doing restructuring advisory for a little over 30 years. Prior to joining BDO about a year ago, I had my own firm, Loughlin Management Partners, and I essentially merged my firm into BDO last August. Today BDO is about 50 people that are doing restructuring advisory around the country. We've got a big presence in New York City. We've got folks in Atlanta and Chicago and Houston and Phoenix, just a good group of folks. Our focus is on providing full service restructuring advisory solutions. And by that, I mean we advise creditors, we advise lenders, and we work with companies. Our focus is not only on the right side of the balance sheet, but we spend an awful lot of time on the turnaround aspect, focusing on business operational improvement, cash management. We provide interim management services. So it's really a full service complement of restructuring advisory services that we're building at BDO.
Okay, well, great. Thank you for the background. I think that's important for everyone to know. I do appreciate that. And what we'll do is now I'll start in on the actual questions that I wanted to ask you today. Lenders of all specialties are faced with significant challenges working with borrowers and negatively impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, as we all know. What should be a lender's top consideration when determining which turnaround restructuring expert to engage during the crisis? And have the considerations of how you make that decision changed since the crisis began?
Mike, that's a really good question. And I think there are a lot of different thoughts on what's important and what's most important. And I think it's really a mix of factors that should come into how a lender views the advisory roster that he is either going to use for his own advice, or that he's going to recommend to a borrower to get some help on a troubled situation. In my view, there are 5 factors that come into play. One is experience. And by that, I mean overall restructuring advisory experience. What has the firm done, and more importantly, the individual that's going to be leading the team? How much experience do they really have? It's been a 11 or 12 year credit cycle. The restructuring business and the roster of experienced people have changed quite a bit. The big firms have gotten bigger. There have been turnover, retirements, etc. So really getting behind more than the brand, but really understanding the person and what's his background, what's he done, what's he's accomplished, what's his approach, I think is number one. And right along with that is senior level commitment. So it's great. I know you made a great presentation. Am I going to see you again? Is there a senior level person commitment? Is the guy that whose resume was so impressive and case experience so expansive going to actually be there on Monday when the project starts? The third thing I'd say is, I get from that individual and from that team and from the approach and really from the case experience that we talked about in the interview, is that person bringing a level of leadership capability and gravitas, if you will, to the situation where he can influence and impact positive results. And those results are not just influencing a lender's decision, but it might be to assist the agent in getting a disparate group of participants to the right answer. It might be working with the CEO or CFO to get the executives to make the right decisions. So I really think there's an element here to where the successful turnaround professional really needs to bring some capability to the job. Industry experience is often, frankly, number 1 through 5 for a lot of buyers of these services. I don't agree with it. I think it's important. It needs to be on the list. It really helps you in the first few weeks to be able to hit the ground running. But after that, it really boils down to, what's your overall restructuring experience and the factors that I mentioned before. Finally, I would add, what else does your firm bring to the table? Not everybody knows everything there is to fix a business or address a business problem. And sometimes you really need to go deep to address the problems facing a company. So having the ability, as an example, to bring e-commerce solutions, having the ability to bring manufacturing strategy or supply chain strategy, having the ability to be an interim manager, to be an interim CFO. Oftentimes people will walk out the door in these troubled situations, and a team of people that can grab the steering wheel and help safely land the troubled entity.
Now, in this new environment today, there's a lot of changes happening within the structures of financing agreements and such. How can lenders most effectively prioritize which borrowers to be given the increased level of requests for relief from advance rates, credit limits, covenants? Is there a way that you would advise lenders to prioritize how they're working with borrowers as a restructuring expert?
Sure. I think that, it's obviously a question that is going to, vary from lender to lender, structure of deal, what's in the portfolio, what other issues and pressures may exist. But just to step back from that for a minute and just talk, qualitatively about what I want to see in a situation that I'm apt to want to support and apt to want to maybe take a little bit more risk than maybe my borrowing base tells me to take, or some other factor that may be coming into play. It really boils down to the quality of management. Do I have a group of folks that know what they're doing? They're willing to take action. They can really talk about the business. And I'm comfortable that, listen, they've been thrown a curveball. The entire nation has been thrown a curveball. But these folks know what they're doing and they have a game plan. Second, I want to see a level of ownership support. Not only with some resources and analytical support, but I want to see some financial monetary support for the business. I want them to be open and honest and supportive of the team, of my loan, and that to me is an incredibly critical factor. If you want me to support it, I need you to support it. It really is a three-legged stool. You've got management, you've got ownership, and you've got the lenders. And the three need to work together and get on the same page, but everybody also carries their own responsibility. And if you want a lender to be supportive and maybe stretch his neck out a bit for a challenging situation, then ownership and management really need to bring to the table a strong proposition.
Okay, great. There was a certain level of flexibility that lenders were showing borrowers prior to the COVID-19 crisis. And do you feel that the level of flexibility that lenders should be showing borrowers today, or are showing borrowers today, should be the same as it was prior to should it be the same as it was prior to the crisis, or has that flexibility changed where you need to look at it a little bit differently today?
Yeah, that's a bit of a challenging question. Again, every situation's different. Every story is different. Each industry segment is experiencing different levels of pain and different levels of recovery. But I would say that the factors that drove what, in my view, has been a general overall support for businesses facing a challenge, were largely, driven by, I think, every lender having to deal with portfolio-wide issues. And like we talked about before, the need to prioritize, where are my real problems? How do I approach them? How do I optimize the situation to maximize my recovery over time? I think that the initial reaction was, whoa, we are going to need some time to work through this. At the same time, the PPP money came in and really helped businesses to extend their runway. I've been in situations where the companies have said, hey, that gave me the opportunity to go from, running out of money in July or August to taking me to the end of the year. So it's provided some more time. I think that as we, get out into the third quarter and we get to September, my expectation is that A, there's going to be less government money available. B, we're going to be 6 or 7 months into this thing. And the idea of continuing to defer interest or principal or providing, a lot of, extra support for businesses, I think is going to shift a little bit. And I think at this point in time, lenders are going to take a harder look at how's the recovery going? How's management doing with this situation? Where's ownership? Like I mentioned before, how are the other two legs of the stool doing these days? And I think there are going to be some more challenging discussions in the fourth quarter. I think that's going to generate, more dialogue, maybe more activity on the restructuring front, because lenders, listen, they have their own needs, and they have to manage their overall portfolio, their overall profitability. And like I said, they have to prioritize their activities. But with all that said, I mean, by and large, the capital markets have remained open. There are deals that are getting done, albeit, not the same, level of activity. But we're beginning to see in our transaction advisory services business a bit of a pickup as, folks are coming back and looking at transactions and looking to do new deals. So that's encouraging as well.
Well, that's good news to hear that there's some activity on that side. What should lenders be seeking from borrowers to demonstrate to the lender that they've taken the actions necessary to preserve their liquidity in the long term?
Yeah, I mean, and the rules haven't changed, too dramatically from what I would consider to be best practices for addressing any troubled business. Certainly the 13-week cash flow, if there's a company out there today that doesn't have one and hasn't instituted that level of discipline, I'd be surprised. This has all been about liquidity and liquidity management. And without that tool, it's just really, really hard to communicate your needs or manage through your needs. But going deeper, I think management teams need to spend some time taking a hard look from a strategy standpoint. Where do they do business? How do they do business? Do I have marginal business activities that pre-COVID I was willing to support, I was willing to invest in? They rounded out, whatever the reason was, they rounded out my portfolio. These could be locations, these could be products, these could be customer segments. And I think it's really important to have reviewed your strategic initiatives, to review your business, and come up with a way to eliminate marginal activities. The idea of then being relatively brutal in terms of how you run your organization. We often recommend a zero-based, budgeting process for taking a good hard look at your expense structure. The idea of, well, let's just cut 10% or 15%. We think that can work, in good times and times of moderate trouble. But I think this is a good time to really sharpen the pencil, determine where you want to compete, how you want to compete, and then build a budget that allows you to really, to some degree, cut things to the bone. Too many businesses, even today, have not recovered on the top line. Many of them are 60, 70%. I know businesses that are 0% recovery. They're in the live entertainment business. They're in the event planning business. They're in hospitality businesses. And maybe they're a seasonal business, and guess what? The season's coming to an end and we kind of missed it. And now it's going to get, going into the fall and winter with a lot of question marks. So this is a great time to put together a hard-hitting plan, a plan that's not business as usual, a plan that focuses on your most important activities and eliminates marginal activities, and then a cost structure that's thoughtful, Spartan to some degree. And again, I think if management delivers that, it'll be very well received, and it will line up with the seriousness of the situation and help the lenders get to a yes in terms of trying to work through the remainder of these issues.
Okay. Well, that's a great overview, and I appreciate that very much. And with that, Jim, I'm actually going to wrap up the interview. And I do appreciate you being here with me today. And I hope that you continue to stay safe and that your team continues to have robust growth. And I wish you and your team the best as we move forward through this new environment.
Fantastic. Take care and enjoy the rest of the summer.